The wagon wheels churned through the dusty streets of Park City, Utah, and Mae Vance pressed her face against the rough wooden slats, watching her father's saloon disappear behind the mountains of silver mine tailings that dominated the skyline in this year of 1878. She had not been given a chance to say goodbye, had not been allowed to gather more than the worn calico dress on her back, and the memories that now burned like acid in her chest. Her father had stood on the porch counting the money, while two men in dark suits had gripped her arms and forced her toward this prison on wheels. 23 years old, and sold like a piece of furniture to settle his gambling debts to Marcus Thornley, the richest mine owner in the territory. The journey took 3 days, each mile carrying her further from everything she had known. The men who transported her said nothing except to bark orders when they stopped to water the horses. Mae learned quickly that silence was her only shield. She thought of her mother, dead these past 10 years, and wondered if the woman would have fought harder than she had. But what could one woman do against 2 armed men and a father who valued cards more than his own blood? Park City had been her home since birth, growing up in the rooms above her father's saloon, where miners spent their silver on whiskey and games of chance. She had served drinks since she was old enough to carry a tray, had listened to 1,000 stories of fortunes won and lost in the dark tunnels beneath the mountain. She had never imagined she would become currency herself. They arrived at a sprawling ranch in the foothills outside of Rock Springs, Wyoming, as the sun painted the sky in shades of amber and rose. The house rose from the prairie like a monument to wealth, 3 stories of painted wood and glass windows that reflected the dying light. Marcus Thornley waited on the wide porch, a man of 50 with silver threading his dark hair and eyes like chips of flint. He dismissed the men with a wave of his hand and studied Mae as though she were a horse he was considering for purchase. "You will work in the kitchen and clean the house," he said without preamble. "My housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, will show you your quarters. You will not leave the property. You will speak when spoken to. Your father's debt was $800. You will work until that sum is repaid with interest." Mae lifted her chin and met his gaze directly. "And how exactly will you calculate my labor against this debt?" Something flickered in Thornley's eyes, surprise perhaps that she would dare to question him. $10 a month, he said coldly. Room and board deducted. The mathematics hit her like a physical blow. At that rate, she would be bound to this place for years, perhaps decades if he continued to add charges against her. But she kept her expression neutral and nodded once. She would not give him the satisfaction of seeing her despair. Mrs. Chen proved to be a woman of few words, her face weathered by years under the western sun, her eyes shrewd and assessing. She led Mae to a small room off the kitchen, barely large enough for a narrow bed and a wooden chest. "You rise at dawn," Mrs. Chen said in accented English. "Water from the well, fire in the stove, breakfast by 6. You clean, you cook, you do not steal, you do not complain, you survive." The words contained more kindness than their harsh delivery suggested, and Mae recognized the voice of experience. "How long have you been here?" 12 years, Mrs. Chen replied, and something in her tone suggested she too had arrived against her will. "I pay my debt in 7 more. That night, lying on the hard mattress that smelled of lie and loneliness, Mae allowed herself to cry for the first time since her father had accepted Thornley's blood money. But as the moon rose outside her small window, she made herself a promise. She would not simply survive this. She would find a way to break free, and when she did, every person who had betrayed her would know the weight of their actions. The days blurred into weeks, each one a test of endurance. Mae rose before dawn to haul water from the well, her shoulders aching from the weight of the buckets. She built fires in the massive cast iron stove, prepared meals for Thornley and his foreman, scrubbed floors until her knees were bruised and her hands were raw. Thornley watched her with calculating eyes, always searching for some weakness to exploit, some failure that would let him extend her servitude. But Lily Mee had grown up in a saloon, had learned to read men's intentions in the set of their shoulders and the tone of their voices. She kept her head down and her work impeccable, gave him no excuse to find fault. In the evenings, after the dishes were washed and put away, Mrs. Chen sometimes sat with her in the kitchen and shared stories of her own journey from China, of the promises that had lured her across an ocean only to find herself trapped in a different kind of bondage. "You are strong, Mrs. Chen said one night, her fingers flying as she mended one of Thornley's shirts. "Stronger than the others he has brought here. They broke or they ran. You do neither." "What happened to the ones who ran?" Mrs. Chen's face went carefully blank. "The foreman found them. It did not go well." The foreman's name was Pike, a man with a cruel mouth and eyes that lingered too long on Lily Mee when she passed. He carried a rifle and a coiled whip on his belt, and the ranch hands gave him wide berth. Lily Mee made sure she was never alone in his presence, always stayed within sight of Mrs. Chen or the other workers. Summer heat baked the prairie, and the work became harder as temperatures climbed. Lily Mee learned to move efficiently, to conserve her energy, to find small moments of rest in the shade of the barn or the cool of the root cellar. She learned which ranch hands were sympathetic and which ones reported every word back to Thornley. She learned to navigate this new world as carefully as a prospector walking through an unstable mine shaft. It was during her 3rd month at the ranch that Lily Mee first saw Harrison Drake. She had been sent to the barn to fetch preserves from the storage room when she heard voices raised in anger. Peering around the doorframe, she saw Thornley facing a tall man in dusty range clothes, his hat pushed back to reveal dark hair, and a face made stern by whatever they were discussing. "I paid for 300 head, the stranger was saying, his voice controlled but edged with fury. "You delivered 270. That is not how honest men do business, Thornley. Are you calling me dishonest?" Thornley's hand moved toward the pistol at his belt. The stranger did not flinch. "I am calling you a cheat and a thief. I want my cattle or I want my money returned. You have until the end of the week to decide which." He turned on his heel and strode toward the barn door, and for a moment his eyes met Lily Mee's across the shadowed space. They were the color of smoke, gray and stormy, and they registered her presence with a quick assessment before he touched the brim of his hat and walked past her into the harsh sunlight. "You there?" Thornley's voice cracked like a whip. "How long have you been standing there?" Lily Mee forced herself to move calmly to show no fear. "I just arrived, sir. Mrs. Chen sent me for the preserves." His eyes narrowed, trying to determine if she lied. "Get what you came for and get back to the house. And keep your mouth shut about things that do not concern you." She nodded and hurried to gather the jars, but her mind was racing. Harrison Drake, that was the name the ranch hands had whispered. He owned a spread south of Rock Springs, had built it from nothing with his own sweat and blood. He was known as a fair man, but a hard one, not someone who would accept being cheated without consequence. That night, Lily Mee lay awake thinking about the stranger's eyes, about the way he had stood his ground against Thornley without backing down. She had seen fear in the mine owner's face, just for an instant, and that glimpse of his vulnerability planted a seed in her mind. The next day brought a development that changed everything. Pike came to the house in mid-morning, his face flushed with drink, though it was barely past breakfast. He found Lily Mee alone in the laundry room, hanging sheets to dry in the hot wind that swept down from the mountains. "Well now," he said, his words slightly slurred. "Pretty little thing all by yourself." Lily Mee felt ice slide down her spine but kept her voice level. "Mr. Thornley expects his laundry finished by noon. I need to work." Pike moved closer, blocking the door. "Thornley is in town. Won't be back until evening. Plenty of time for you and me to get better acquainted. Mrs. Chen is expecting me in the kitchen." Lily Mee edged toward the basket of wet linens, searching for anything she could use as a weapon. "Mrs. Chen is out in the garden." His hand shot out and grabbed her wrist, his fingers digging into her flesh. "You are going to be nice to me, or I am going to tell Thornley you have been stealing. Add another 5 years to your debt. Is that what you want?" Lily Mee drove her knee upward with all the strength she possessed, catching him squarely between the legs. Pike doubled over with a strangled cry, and she shoved past him, running for the house. But he recovered faster than she expected, rage overriding his pain. He caught her halfway across the yard, his fist tangling in her hair and jerking her backward. "You are going to regret that," he snarled, his other hand raised to strike. The sound of hoofbeats stopped him. They both turned to see a rider approaching at a gallop, dust rising in a cloud behind the horse. Pike released Lily Mee with a curse and stepped back, his hand dropping to the whip at his belt as the rider pulled up in a scatter of gravel. Harrison Drake sat astride a bay gelding, his face dark with fury as he took in the scene before him. "Let her go." "This is none of your business, Drake," Pike said, but there was uncertainty in his voice now. "I am making it my business." Harrison swung down from his horse in one fluid motion. He was taller than Pike by several inches, broader through the shoulders, and he moved with the easy confidence of a man who knew how to handle himself in a fight. "The lady clearly does not want your attention. Step away." Pike's hand tightened on the whip handle. "Thornley owns her. She is property, not a lady." "No man owns another person," Harrison said quietly, and there was something deadly in his calm tone. "Not anymore, not here. Now you can walk away or I can make you crawl away, your choice." For a long moment they faced each other, tension crackling in the air like lightning before a storm. Then Pike spat in the dust and stalked away, throwing back a final threat. "Thornley will hear about this. You are already on his bad side, Drake. Keep pushing and you will regret it." Harrison watched until the foreman disappeared into the barn, then turned to Lily Mee. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, not trusting her voice. Her wrist throbbed where Pike had grabbed her, and she could feel the sting of tears behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "What is your name?" His voice was gentler now, concerned. "Lily Mae Vance." The words came out steadier than she felt. "How did you come to be here, Lily Mae Vance?" The story spilled out before she could stop it, all the anger and humiliation of the past months. She told him about her father, about the debt, about Thornley's impossible terms that would keep her bound to this place for most of her life. Harrison listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with each word. "That is not legal," he said when she finished. "What Thornley is doing, it is indentured servitude. The law does not allow it." "The law does not care about people like me," Lily Mee said bitterly. "The sheriff in Rock Springs plays cards with Thornley every Saturday night. Who do you think he would believe?" Harrison was quiet for a moment, his gray eyes searching her face. "I came here today to confront Thornley again about those cattle, but I think I might have found something more important." He reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a canteen, offering it to her. "Drink. Then go back to your work before Thornley returns. But know this, Lily Mee, you are not alone anymore." The words struck something deep in her chest, a chord that had not been played since her mother died. She took the canteen with trembling hands and drank deeply, the water cool and clean. "Why would you help me? You do not know me." "I know enough," he said simply. "I know what it is like to be powerless, to have everything taken by men who think their money makes them gods. I built my ranch from nothing because someone gave me a chance when I had none. Maybe it is time I paid that forward." Hoofbeats sounded from the direction of the main road, multiple riders approaching fast. Harrison's jaw tightened. "That will be Thornley. Go inside. Do not mention that I was here or that we spoke. Can you do that?" Lily Mee nodded. She handed back the canteen and ran for the house, slipping through the kitchen door just as Thornley and 3 of his men rode into the yard. From the window she watched as Harrison mounted his horse and rode out to meet them, his posture relaxed but ready. Voices were raised, though she could not make out the words. Then Harrison wheeled his horse and galloped away, and Thornley stood in the yard staring after him with an expression that made Lily Mee's blood run cold. That night, Mrs. Chen brought her a salve for her bruised wrist. "I heard what happened with Pike," she said quietly. "You were lucky the stranger came when he did. His name is Harrison Drake. I know who he is." Mrs. Chen applied the salve with careful fingers. "He is a good man, they say, but crossing Thornley is dangerous, for you and for him." "I did not ask him to help me." "No, but he did anyway. That makes you valuable to Thornley now, a lever he can use against Drake." Mrs. Chen's eyes were sad. "Be careful, Lily Mee, very careful." The warning proved prophetic. Over the next week, Thornley watched Lily Mee constantly, his eyes calculating. Pike kept his distance, but his hatred was palpable every time their paths crossed. And Harrison Drake did not return, though Lily Mee found herself watching the road whenever she had a moment, hoping to see a rider on a bay horse cresting the hill. Then came the night that changed everything. Lily Mee woke to the smell of smoke. For a confused moment, she thought the kitchen stove had been left burning, but then she heard the crackling roar of flames and knew this was something far worse. She threw open her door to find the hallway filled with thick gray smoke. Somewhere in the house, someone was screaming, "Mrs. Chen" appeared through the haze, a wet cloth pressed to her face. "Fire in the front rooms," she shouted over the noise. "We have to get out." They ran for the kitchen door, but flames had already blocked that path. The heat was intense, searing Lily Mee's lungs with every breath. They reversed direction, heading for the servants' entrance at the back of the house. Behind them, ceiling beams cracked and groaned. The house that had been her prison was becoming her tomb. The door was locked. Lily Mee threw her weight against it twice while Mrs. Chen coughed violently beside her. The smoke was too thick now, too hot. Lily Mee could feel consciousness slipping away when suddenly the door burst inward and strong hands grabbed her arms. Harrison Drake pulled her out into the blessed cool air of the night, then went back for Mrs. Chen. By the time he dragged the housekeeper to safety, the roof was beginning to collapse, sending up showers of sparks that lit the darkness like demonic fireflies. Ranch hands ran in organized chaos, forming bucket brigades from the well, but it was clear the house was lost. Lily Mee sat on the ground gasping for air, her nightgown torn and soaked with water someone had thrown over her. Harrison knelt beside her, his face smudged with soot. "Can you breathe? Are you hurt?" She shook her head, still unable to speak. Around them, the world was painted in shades of orange and red, the heat so intense they had to keep moving back as the fire consumed Thornley's mansion. She saw the mine owner standing near the barn, his face a mask of rage and something else, something that looked almost like fear. "How did you know?" She finally managed to ask Harrison. "How did you get here in time?" "I was camped about a mile away watching the place." He had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. I have been keeping an eye on things since last week. I did not trust Thornley not to retaliate somehow, and I thought you might need help. You have been sleeping on the ground for a week because you were worried about me, among other reasons, he admitted. I have also been gathering evidence about those missing cattle and about some other interesting business dealings Thornley has been involved in. I think that fire might not have been an accident. Lily Mee followed his gaze to where Thornley stood arguing with Pike, their gestures angry and animated. You think he set his own house on fire? I think the house was insured for a great deal of money, and I think Thornley's mines are not producing as much silver as people believe. A man in financial trouble might do desperate things. Harrison helped her to her feet. But right now, we need to get you somewhere safe. Thornley cannot keep you here anymore. The house is gone and his authority with it. He still claims I owe him money. Then let him try to collect it through the courts instead of through slavery. Harrison's voice was firm. You are coming with me, Lily Mee. Both of you, he added, looking at Mrs. Chen. I have room on my ranch and I need help with the horses, paying work with real wages. Mrs. Chen looked at Lily Mee and some silent communication passed between them. Then the older woman nodded. We accept. Thornley saw them moving toward Harrison's horse and came striding over, his face twisted with fury. Where do you think you are going? She belongs to me. She belongs to herself, Harrison said, stepping between Thornley and Lily Mee. Your house is ashes. Your claim is void. I have papers. Legal documents. Papers that document an illegal arrangement, Harrison countered. Do you really want to take this to a judge, Thornley? Because I have been doing some research. Indentured servitude was outlawed in Utah Territory in 1862. What you have been doing here is called slavery, and the 13th Amendment has some very clear words about that. Thornley's hand moved toward his gun, but Harrison was faster. His own pistol cleared leather in a blur of motion, the barrel leveled at Thornley's chest. Do not make that mistake. The tableau held for a long, breathless moment. Then Thornley's hand fell away from his weapon and he smiled, a cold and terrible expression. This is not over, Drake. You have made an enemy tonight. I made an enemy when I refused to pretend your cheating was honest business, Harrison replied. This just makes it official. He backed toward his horse, keeping his gun trained on Thornley until he could help Lily Mee and Mrs. Chen mount up. They rode away from the burning house with Thornley's curses following them into the darkness. The night ride to Harrison's ranch took several hours, following trails lit only by starlight and the distant glow of the fire they left behind. Lily Mee rode behind Harrison on the bay gelding, her arms wrapped around his waist, feeling the steady strength of him against her. She was aware of him in ways that had nothing to do with the circumstances of their escape, aware of the wood smoke scent of his shirt, and the way his voice rumbled in his chest when he spoke to Mrs. Chen riding his spare horse beside them. Thank you, she said quietly, her words nearly lost in the sound of hoofbeats. For everything. You do not need to thank me for doing what is right. Most men would not see it that way. Most men would have looked the other way. Harrison was silent for a moment. My mother was sold to pay my father's debts when I was 12 years old. I never saw her again. When I look at you, I see her. I see every person who has been treated as less than human by those with power and money. I swore when I was old enough to fight back, I would never stand by and let it happen again. The words explained so much about the man who had risked everything to save her. Lily Mee felt her throat tighten with emotion, and she allowed herself to rest her cheek against his back, just for a moment, drawing comfort from his solid presence. They reached Drake Ranch as dawn was breaking over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. The ranch was smaller than Thornley's had been but far more welcoming. with corrals full of horses and a sturdy log house that looked built to last for generations. A few ranch hands were already moving about their morning chores, and they looked up with curiosity as Harrison rode in with two soot-stained women. "Jeb, get the guest rooms ready," Harrison called to an older man with gray in his beard. "And send someone to fetch the doctor." We had some trouble tonight. Within minutes, Lily Mee found herself in a clean room with a real bed and curtains on the windows. A young woman brought hot water for washing and clean clothes that smelled of lavender. "I am Sarah," she said with a shy smile. "I help Mr. Drake with the house. There is breakfast in the kitchen when you are ready." Lily Mee washed away the soot and smoke, dressed in the borrowed clothes that were only slightly too large, and made her way downstairs following the smell of coffee and bacon. Harrison was already at the table, talking with Mrs. Chen and several of his ranch hands. He stood when Lily Mee entered, pulling out a chair for her with old-fashioned courtesy. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Like I can breathe for the first time in months," she said honestly, "but also terrified of what comes next." "Thornley is not going to let this go." "No, he is not," Harrison agreed. "Which is why I am riding into Rock Springs this morning to speak with the territorial marshal. Thornley may own the local sheriff, but the marshal is a different matter. I have been building a case against him for weeks now. The fire last night and your testimony about your treatment will be the final pieces." Lily Mee felt hope flutter in her chest like a caged bird testing its wings. "You really think the law will act against him?" "I know some powerful people, Lily Mee. I have not always been a rancher. Before I came west, I was a lawyer in Chicago. I gave it up after my wife died, wanted to start fresh somewhere new, but I still remember how the law works and I still have connections." He poured her coffee, his hands steady and sure. "Thornley's reign ends today." It took 3 weeks for the full weight of justice to fall on Marcus Thornley, but when it came, it was complete. The territorial marshal arrived with federal deputies, and a list of charges that included fraud, theft, arson for profit, and yes, involuntary servitude. The investigation revealed that Thornley's mines had been nearly played out for over a year, that he had been running a shell game with investors, using money from new claims to pay returns on old ones. The house fire had been his desperate attempt to collect insurance money before the entire scheme collapsed. Pike was arrested trying to flee to California, and his testimony in exchange for a lighter sentence revealed the extent of Thornley's criminal enterprise. There were others like Lily Mee, workers trapped by manufactured debts, their labor stolen through legal-sounding contracts that would not hold up to scrutiny. The territorial court moved swiftly, and by the end of summer, Thornley was sentenced to 15 years in the territorial prison. But for Lily Mee, those 3 weeks were about much more than seeing justice done. They were about discovering who she was when she was not simply trying to survive. Harrison gave her work helping to train his horses, and she discovered she had a gift for it. The animals responded to her gentle but firm handling, and within days, she was working with even the most difficult colts. She also discovered that Harrison Drake was unlike any man she had ever known. He treated her as an equal, asked her opinion on ranch matters, paid her fair wages that she could save or spend as she chose. He made her laugh with his dry humor and his stories of mishaps during his early days ranching. He taught her to ride properly, to shoot, to navigate by the stars. And slowly, carefully, they began to know each other in the way that two people do when they are building something that might last. One evening in late summer, they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of purple and gold. Lily Mee had been thinking about her father, about the fact that she had neither seen nor heard from him since the day he sold her. Part of her wanted to ride back to Park City and confront him, but a wiser part knew he was not worth the effort. "I saw the anger in your eyes just now," Harrison said quietly. "Where did you go?" "I was thinking about my father, about whether I will ever be able to forgive him." "Forgiveness is a gift you give yourself, not the person who wronged you," Harrison said. "You do not have to forgive him. But you do have to decide not to let what he did define the rest of your life." "Is that what you did?" "With your father?" Harrison was quiet for a long time. "My father drank himself to death within a year of selling my mother. I spent a long time being angry, being bitter. It poisoned everything I touched until I finally realized I was letting him win even from the grave. So I decided to build something good, something that would honor my mother's memory. This ranch is that legacy." Lily Mee reached over and took his hand, and he turned to look at her with those smoke-gray eyes that had been the first thing she noticed about him. "You are a good man, Harrison Drake. I am a man who knows a rare and precious thing when he finds it," he said, "and who is terrified of ruining it by speaking too soon." Her heart was suddenly pounding. What if it is not too soon? What if the other person has been waiting for you to speak? He stood and drew her up with him, his hands gentle on her arms. "Lily Mae Vance, I know the circumstances of how we met were terrible. I know you have been through hell, and you deserve time to heal, time to find yourself. But I need you to know that from the moment I saw you in that barn, standing up to Thornley with more courage than most men possess, I have been falling in love with you. If you need time, I will wait. If you can never see me as anything more than the man who helped you escape, I will accept that and treasure your friendship. But I had to tell you the truth." Lily Mee felt tears on her cheeks, but they were not tears of sorrow. "You want to know what I see when I look at you? I see the man who risked everything for a stranger. I see someone who is strong and kind and honorable. I see the first person since my mother died who has made me feel truly safe. And I see the man I am falling in love with too." Harrison cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs gently wiping away her tears. "May I kiss you? I have been waiting for you to ask," she whispered. The kiss was soft and sweet, full of promise and possibility. It tasted like hope and new beginnings, like all the things Lily Mee had thought were lost to her forever. When they finally drew apart, she rested her forehead against his and smiled. "So what happens now?" she asked. "Now we take our time," Harrison said. "We get to know each other properly. We build something together, something good and true. And when you are ready, if you are ready, we talk about making this permanent." "I think I would like that," Lily Mee said. "I think I would like that very much." The autumn brought changes and challenges. Thornley's assets were seized and sold at auction to pay his debts and restitution to his victims. Lily Mee attended the sale and bought back the deed to her father's saloon for a fraction of what he had lost gambling. She sold it the next day to a businessman from Salt Lake City for 3 times what she paid, pocketing the difference with a sense of satisfaction that was better than any revenge. She used part of that money to help Mrs. Chen buy a boarding house in Rock Springs, setting the older woman up in a business of her own. Mrs. Chen cried when Lily Mee handed her the deed, then pulled herself together and gave Lily Mee the longest hug she had ever received from the normally stoic woman. "You have a good heart, Mrs. Chen said. "Do not let the world make you hard." "I will not," Lily Mee promised. "You taught me how to survive. Harrison is teaching me how to live. Between the two of you, I think I might actually be happy." She used the rest of the money to buy a partnership in Harrison's ranch, insisting that if they were going to build something together, it needed to be truly together. He tried to refuse, saying she did not need to buy her place in his life, but she stood firm. "This is not about buying anything," she explained. This is about being an equal partner. This is about having something that is mine that no one can ever take away. Do you understand? He understood. They had the papers drawn up by a lawyer in Rock Springs, making Drake Ranch a joint enterprise. Mae Vance became a property owner, a businesswoman, someone with legal standing and rights. It was a feeling more powerful than she had imagined. Winter came early that year, snow falling in thick curtains that blanketed the ranch in white. Mae and Harrison spent long evenings by the fire, talking about everything and nothing, sharing stories of their pasts and dreams for the future. They kissed and held each other, but Harrison never pushed for more, content to let their relationship develop at its own pace. "You are being very patient," Mae teased him one night as they sat tangled together on the sofa, her head on his shoulder. "You are worth being patient for," he said simply. "Besides, I am not going anywhere. We have all the time in the world, but patience only stretched so far." On Christmas Eve, as snow fell softly outside and candles burned in the windows, Harrison took Mae's hand and led her to the barn. There, in a stall bedded with fresh straw, stood a beautiful paint mare with a red ribbon tied around her neck. "She is yours," Harrison said. "Merry Christmas." Mae was speechless. The mare was gorgeous, all flowing lines and intelligent eyes. She ran her hand down the horse's neck, feeling the warm solidity of the animal. "Harrison, this is too much." "It is not nearly enough," he said, "but it is a start." He pulled a small box from his pocket and went down on one knee in the straw. "Mae Vance, I know we have only known each other for 6 months. I know that is not very long in the grand scheme of things. But I also know that I love you more than I thought it was possible to love another person. I know that I want to spend every day for the rest of my life making you happy. Will you marry me?" The ring in the box was simple and beautiful, a single diamond set in silver. Mae looked at it, then at Harrison kneeling before her with his heart in his eyes, and she felt the last piece of her broken soul click back into place. "Yes," she said, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, absolutely yes." He slipped the ring on her finger and stood, lifting her off her feet and spinning her around while the mare nickered softly in approval. They kissed until they were both breathless, until the cold finally drove them back to the warm house where Sarah and the ranch hands were waiting with cider and congratulations. They were married in early spring, when the mountains were still capped with snow but wildflowers were beginning to bloom in the valleys. The ceremony took place at the ranch, with Mrs. Chen and all the ranch hands in attendance. Even a few people from Rock Springs came, neighbors who had come to respect Harrison and to admire Mae's courage in standing up to Thornley. Mae wore a dress of cream silk that Mrs. Chen had sewn for her, with tiny pearls sewn around the neckline. Harrison wore a new black suit and looked so handsome he took her breath away. They exchanged vows under an arch of pine boughs, promising to love and honor each other through all the challenges life might bring. "I promise to be your partner in all things," Mae said, her voice steady and clear. "To stand beside you in good times and bad, to build with you a life worth living, to love you with my whole heart for all the days I am given." "I promise to cherish you," Harrison replied. "To respect your strength and support your dreams. To be the man you deserve. To love you with everything I am from this day until my last." When they kissed as husband and wife, the assembled crowd cheered, and Mae felt joy so intense it was almost painful. This was her new life, her new beginning, earned not through luck but through courage and determination. She had been sold like property, but she had returned as a woman of means, of substance, of worth. And more than that, she had returned with love. The first year of their marriage was not without challenges. Running a ranch was hard work. And there were lean times when the cattle market dropped, or when harsh weather took its toll on the livestock. But Lily Mee and Harrison faced every obstacle together, their partnership making them stronger than either could have been alone. Lily Mee proved to have a head for business that complemented Harrison's knowledge of law and ranching. She negotiated better prices for their horses, established relationships with buyers in Salt Lake City, and even as far away as Denver. She expanded their breeding program, carefully selecting bloodlines that produced animals known for their stamina and intelligence. Within 2 years, Drake Ranch horses were in demand throughout the territory. She also made a point of helping other women who found themselves in desperate circumstances. When she heard of a widow struggling to keep her homestead, she loaned money at fair terms. When a young woman showed up at the ranch fleeing an abusive marriage, Lily Mee gave her work and a safe place to stay. Harrison supported these efforts without question, understanding that this was part of how Lily Mee healed from her own trauma. News reached them occasionally from Park City. Lily Mee's father had lost his saloon and was working as a swamper in someone else's establishment, cleaning up after the very miners he had once served. She felt nothing when she heard this, not satisfaction or anger or even pity. He had become irrelevant to her life, a chapter firmly closed. The second spring after their marriage brought changes of a different sort. Lily Mee realized she was pregnant on a morning when the scent of coffee made her ill, and she could not face breakfast. Harrison was concerned until the doctor rode out from Rock Springs and confirmed what she already suspected. "You are going to be a father," she told Harrison that evening, watching his face carefully for his reaction. For a moment he just stared at her, processing the information. Then a smile spread across his face, so full of joy that it brought tears to her eyes. "Truly, truly," she confirmed, and he swept her into his arms, holding her like she was made of spun glass. "We are going to have a baby," he said wonderingly. "You and I are going to have a child." "Are you happy?" she asked, needing to hear it said. "Happy does not begin to cover it," he replied. "Terrified, amazed, grateful, and yes, happier than I have any right to be. Lily Mee Drake, you have given me everything." The pregnancy was not easy. Lily Mee suffered from sickness that lasted well beyond the first few months, and there were times when she was so exhausted she could barely stand. Harrison fretted over her constantly, trying to make her rest, insisting she stop working with the horses. They argued about it, their first real fights as a married couple. "I am pregnant, not an invalid," Lily Mee said after he tried to physically prevent her from going to the corrals one morning. "I need to work. I need to feel useful." "You are useful. You are growing our child." "That is the most important work there is. And I can do that while still running this ranch," she shot back. "Harrison, please, do not make me into someone who needs to be wrapped in cotton and kept safe. That is not who I am." He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "I am terrified of losing you, of losing the baby. After everything we have been through, now that we have this happiness, I cannot bear the thought of it being taken away." Lily Mee's anger melted. She took his hand and placed it on her belly, which was just beginning to round. "Feel that. That is our child, strong and healthy. And I am strong too. I will not break, but I need you to trust me to know my own limits." They found a compromise. Lily Mee continued to work but agreed to let others handle the more physical tasks. She focused on training and bookkeeping, on the parts of ranch management that did not require heavy lifting or long hours in the saddle. And Harrison learned to step back, to trust his wife's judgment about what her body could handle. Their son was born on a cold November night, arriving 3 weeks early in a labor that was mercifully short. Harrison was there through all of it, holding Lily Mee's hand and whispering encouragement, even when she cursed him for getting her into this situation. When the baby finally emerged, red-faced and screaming with healthy lungs, they both cried. "He is perfect," Lily Mee whispered, cradling the tiny bundle against her chest. "Look what we made." "He has your eyes," Harrison said, touching one impossibly small hand with a gentle finger. They named him Henry, after Harrison's father, a gesture of forgiveness and moving forward. Henry Marcus Drake, with his mother's green eyes and his father's dark hair, and a grip that suggested he would be a horseman like both his parents. Lily Mee adjusted to motherhood with the same determination she brought to everything else. There were hard nights when Henry cried for hours and nothing would soothe him. There were moments of doubt when she wondered if she was doing anything right. But there were also moments of pure joy, when he smiled at her, or when she watched Harrison rock their son to sleep with such tenderness it made her heart ache. The ranch continued to thrive. As Henry grew from infant to toddler, he toddled after his parents everywhere, learning ranch life from the moment he could walk. By the time he was 3, he could sit a horse with Harrison, his small hands gripping the saddle horn while his father kept a protective arm around him. Lily Mee thought often about the woman she had been when she first arrived at Thornley's ranch, broken and angry and trapped. She hardly recognized that person anymore. She had been forged by fire and had emerged stronger, surer of who she was and what she wanted. Her life had become more than she had ever imagined possible. News came in the 4th year after her escape that Marcus Thornley had died in prison, killed in a fight with another inmate. Lily Mee felt nothing when she heard. The man who had tried to steal her life had been irrelevant for so long that even his death could not touch her. She was free of him in every way that mattered. More interesting was the news that came from her father. He had written her a letter, the first communication in years, asking for money. The letter was full of excuses and half apologies, claiming he had made a mistake, but that she owed him as his daughter. Lily Mee showed the letter to Harrison, and they discussed it over dinner while Henry played with his wooden horses on the floor beside them. "What do you want to do?" Harrison asked. "I want to tell him no," Lily Mee said slowly. "I want him to know that the daughter he sold is now wealthier than he ever was and that she owes him nothing. But I also want to move past this completely. What do you think?" "I think you should do whatever brings you peace," Harrison said. "He does not deserve your money, but if giving him something lets you close that door forever, then maybe it is worth it." In the end, Lily Mee sent her father $100 and a short letter. She told him it was the only money he would ever receive from her, that this payment was to clear any imagined debt between them once and for all. She told him she had built a good life despite his actions, not because of them, and that she never wished to hear from him again. She never did. Years later, she heard he had died, but by then it was just a fact, nothing more. The man who had been her father had stopped mattering long ago. The years rolled on, marked by the changing seasons and the rhythm of ranch life. Henry grew tall and strong, with his mother's gift for horses and his father's steady wisdom. When he was 7, Lily Mee gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl they named James and Charlotte. The ranch house rang with the sound of children's laughter, with the chaos and joy of a growing family. Lily Mee expanded the ranch's operations, buying additional land when neighboring homesteaders gave up and returned east. She established a reputation as a fair but shrewd businesswoman, someone whose word was good as gold and whose judgment was sound. She became a voice in territorial politics, advocating for laws that protected workers' rights and prevented the kind of exploitation she had endured. Harrison became known as a rancher who treated his workers well, who paid fair wages and never asked more than he was willing to give himself. Together, They built Drake Ranch into one of the most successful operations in Wyoming Territory, a place where people wanted to work because they knew they would be treated with respect. Mrs. Chen became a regular visitor, her boarding house thriving in Rock Springs. She became honorary grandmother to Lily Mee's children, teaching them to speak Chinese and sharing stories of her own journey across the ocean. She lived to be 83, surrounded by people who loved her, her debts long since paid and her freedom complete. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Harrison took Lily Mee up into the mountains for a picnic, leaving the children with Sarah for the day. They rode to a high meadow where wildflowers bloomed in riotous color, and the whole valley spread out below them like a promise. 10 years, Harrison said, helping her down from her horse. It feels like both forever and no time at all. I know what you mean, Lily Mee replied, settling onto the blanket he spread on the grass. Sometimes I still cannot believe this is my life, that you are my husband, that those 3 beautiful children are ours. You ever think about what might have happened if I had not been there that day, if I had not come back to confront Thornley? Lily Mee considered the question seriously. I think I would have found a way to escape eventually. I was too angry to stay broken forever. But I am grateful every day that you were there, that you saw me and chose to help. You gave me not just freedom but a life worth living. You gave me love when I thought I would never trust anyone again. Harrison pulled her close, and they sat watching clouds drift across the vast Wyoming sky. You know what I think about, he said. I think about that woman I saw in Thornley's barn, the one who looked at me with such fierce courage even though she had every reason to be defeated. I think about how lucky I am that she agreed to marry me. Not as lucky as I am that you asked, Lily Mee countered, and they kissed like newlyweds, like people who had discovered something rare and chose to treasure it every single day. As the sun began to set, painting the mountains in shades of gold and crimson, Lily Mee thought about the journey that had brought her here. She had been sold to pay a debt, treated as property, stripped of dignity and choice. But she had returned, not just physically but in every way that mattered. She had returned richer than the man who tried to own her, richer than the father who betrayed her, richer than anyone who had ever underestimated her strength. But the riches that mattered most could not be counted in dollars. They were measured in the strength of Harrison's arms around her, in the laughter of her children, in the respect of her community and the loyalty of her friends. They were measured in the life she had built from nothing, in the woman she had become through fire and determination. What are you thinking? Harrison asked, seeing the distant look in her eyes. I am thinking that I would not change anything, Lily Mee said honestly. Not the betrayal or the pain or even the fear, because all of it led me here to this moment to you, and that makes it all worthwhile. They rode home as stars began to appear in the darkening sky, back to the ranch that was theirs, back to the children who were waiting. Lily Mee thought about the girl she had been, pressed against the slats of a wagon, watching her home disappear. If she could speak to that girl now, she would tell her to be brave, to hold on, because something beautiful was coming. She would tell her that the worst moments of her life were leading to the best ones, that the betrayal would eventually become the foundation for something unshakable. But that girl was gone now, transformed into a woman who knew her own worth, who had claimed her place in the world and made it unassailable. Lily Mee Drake, rancher, businesswoman, wife, mother, and survivor. She had been sold but never truly owned. She had been betrayed but not broken. And she had returned, not just to the place she started, but to a life beyond anything she could have imagined. As they approached the ranch house, lights glowing warmly in the windows, she could hear her children calling for them. Harrison squeezed her hand and she squeezed back, a silent communication of all the things they felt but did not need to say aloud. This was home. This was happiness. This was the life they had built together from ashes and determination. The years continued to unfold, each one adding new layers to their story. Henry grew into a fine young man, eventually taking over more of the ranch operations as Harrison's hair went from dark to silver. James showed an aptitude for business that reminded everyone of his mother, while Charlotte combined her father's love of justice with her mother's fierce independence, eventually becoming one of the first female lawyers in Wyoming. But through it all, through the challenges and triumphs, the sorrows and joys, Harrison and Lily Mee remained the constant center. Their love had begun in chaos and desperation, but had grown into something deep and enduring, a partnership that neither time nor trouble could shake. On their 25th anniversary, the ranch hosted a celebration that drew people from throughout the territory. Former workers came to pay their respects, business associates became friends, and the house overflowed with people whose lives had been touched by the couple's generosity and integrity. Lily Mee stood on the porch watching the festivities, Harrison beside her with his arm around her waist, and marveled at how far they had come. "You remember that first night?" she asked quietly. "When you pulled me from the fire?" "I remember everything," Harrison replied. "I remember thinking I had never seen anyone fight so hard to live. I remember knowing, even then, that you were someone extraordinary." "We have been fortunate," Lily Mee said. "We have been determined," Harrison corrected. "Fortune favors those who refuse to quit, and you, my love, have never quit a day in your life." She turned in his arms and kissed him, ignoring the good-natured whistles from their guests. After 25 years of marriage, she still felt that spark when he touched her, still found new things to love about him. It was a gift she never took for granted. As the party continued into the evening, Lily Mee took a moment alone in the barn, walking among the horses that had become such an important part of her life. She found the paint Mayor Harrison had given her that long-ago Christmas, now an old lady herself, gentle and wise. Lily Mee stroked the mare's nose and thought about the journey they had all traveled together. "We made it," she whispered to the horse. "We not only survived, we thrived, and we did it our way." The mare nickered softly, and Lily Mee smiled. Behind her, she heard footsteps and turned to see Harrison silhouetted in the barn door. "There you are. I should have known you would sneak away to visit the horses." "Old habits," Lily Mee said with a grin. "Come here, I want to show you something." She led him to the last stall, where a young filly stood on wobbly legs, born just that morning. The foal was the spitting image of her grandmother, the paint mare, continuing the bloodline that had become famous throughout the West. "She is perfect," Harrison said softly. "What will you name her?" Lily Mee thought for a moment, then smiled. "Freedom. Her name is Freedom." It was the perfect name, encompassing everything they had fought for and won. Harrison put his arm around Lily Mee's shoulders, and they stood together watching the filly explore her stall, full of possibility and promise. This was the life Lily Mae Vance Drake had built, not through luck or chance, but through courage and determination and the willingness to keep fighting even when everything seemed lost. She had been sold to pay a debt, treated as less than human, stripped of choice and dignity. But she had emerged from that crucible stronger and more sure of herself than ever before, and she had returned, not in bitterness or rage, but in triumph. Returned richer than Marcus Thornley with his mines and his mansion, richer than her father with his saloon and his cards, richer than everyone who had ever underestimated her or tried to break her spirit, because true wealth could not be measured in silver or gold. It was measured in love freely given and received, in children who knew they were cherished, in a partner who saw you as an equal, in work that gave purpose and pride, in a community built on respect and fairness, in freedom earned through struggle and defended with everything you had. Lily Mee had all of that and more. She had returned richer than every soul who had betrayed her, and she had done it not through revenge but through the simple act of living well, of building something good and true in the face of all that tried to destroy her. As she and Harrison walked back to the house hand in hand, the sounds of celebration drifting through the warm evening air, Lily Mee felt a profound sense of peace. The past no longer haunted her. The future no longer frightened her. She was exactly where she was meant to be, with the man she was meant to love, living the life she was meant to build. And that, she thought as Harrison pulled her close for another kiss beneath the stars, was worth more than all the silver in all the mines in Utah territory. That was everything that mattered. That was coming home. The years that followed were gentle ones, marked by the satisfaction of watching children become adults and make their own way in the world. Henry married a schoolteacher from Rock Springs and brought her to live on the ranch, ensuring the Drake legacy would continue into another generation. James opened a mercantile in town that quickly became the most successful in the territory. Charlotte went east to law school, then returned to practice in Wyoming, where she fought for the rights of workers and women with the same fierce determination her mother had shown. Lily Mee and Harrison grew old together, their hair turning white, their hands marked by years of hard work, but their love as strong as ever. They still rode out into the high meadows when weather permitted, still sat on the porch in the evenings watching the sun set over the mountains. They told stories to their grandchildren about the old days, though they softened some of the harsher truths, preferring to emphasize the lessons learned rather than the pain endured. On a crisp autumn morning when Lily Mee was 68 years old, she woke to find Harrison watching her with an expression of such love it took her breath away. "What is it?" she asked, reaching up to touch his weathered face. "I was just thinking about how blessed I am," he said softly. "To have spent my life with you, to have built all of this together, I would not change a single moment." "Neither would I," Lily Mee replied, and meant it with her whole heart. "You saved me, Harrison Drake, in every way a person can be saved." "No," he said, gathering her into his arms. "We saved each other. That is what love does." They lay together as morning light filled their room, two people who had found each other in the darkest of circumstances and had built a life that shone like a beacon for others to follow. When they finally rose to face the day, Lily Mee walked to the window and looked out over the ranch they had created together, at the corrals and barns, at the horses grazing in the fields, at the mountains rising in the distance. This was her kingdom, earned not through inheritance or luck, but through sheer force of will. This was the proof that one woman's courage could change her entire world. This was the legacy she would leave behind, not just in buildings and livestock, but in the example she set for everyone who knew her story. She had been sold to pay a debt, betrayed by those who should have protected her, reduced to property in the eyes of men who valued money more than humanity. But she had risen from those ashes like the phoenix in the stories, transformed by fire into something stronger and more brilliant than before. She had returned richer than every soul who had betrayed her, and she had done it with grace and determination, with love and forgiveness, with an unshakable belief in her own worth. And standing beside her through it all had been Harrison, her partner in every sense of the word, the man who had seen her when others looked through her, who had loved her when she barely loved herself. Together they had created something lasting and true, something that would endure long after they were gone. As Lily Mee turned from the window, Harrison held out his hand to her. She took it without hesitation, their fingers interlacing as naturally as breathing. They walked downstairs together to face whatever the day might bring, secure in the knowledge that whatever came, they would face it as they always had. Side by side, heart to heart, partners in the greatest adventure of all. Their love story, born in fire and forged in struggle, had become the stuff of legend throughout Wyoming territory. People spoke of Harrison Drake, the lawyer-turned-rancher who had stood up to corruption. They spoke of Lily Mae Drake, the woman who had transformed herself from victim to victor. But most of all, they spoke of what two people could accomplish when they chose each other, when they built their lives on a foundation of respect and equality and love that would not be shaken. And in the years to come, when their great-grandchildren asked about the old days, about how Drake Ranch came to be, the story would be told and retold. The story of a young woman who had every reason to give up but never did. The story of a good man who saw injustice and could not walk away. The story of two people who found each other against all odds and built something beautiful from the wreckage of their pasts. It was a story worth telling, worth remembering, worth passing down through the generations as a reminder that no matter how dark the night, dawn always comes for those who refuse to stop fighting for it. It was a story of betrayal and redemption, of injustice and triumph, but most of all, it was a story of love conquering even the deepest wounds. Lily Mae and Harrison lived well into their 80s, dying within 6 months of each other, as couples who have been truly bonded sometimes do. They were laid to rest on a hill overlooking the ranch, under a cottonwood tree they had planted together in their first year of marriage. The headstones were simple, bearing their names and the dates of their lives, but the legacy they left was anything but simple. Drake Ranch continued to thrive under their children and grandchildren, remaining a place where people were treated with dignity, where hard work was rewarded fairly, where the values of justice and compassion were never forgotten. The horses they bred remained famous throughout the West, carrying their reputation for quality and integrity into the new century. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when the wind blew down from the mountains, people claimed they could see two figures walking hand in hand through the meadows, a man and a woman whose love had been strong enough to change their world. Whether it was ghost or memory or simply the power of a story well told, it served as a reminder of what Lily Mae Vance Drake had accomplished. She had been sold to pay a debt, but she had returned richer than every soul who betrayed her. Richer in love, in courage, in the legacy she left behind. She had taken the worst thing that ever happened to her and transformed it into the foundation for the best life she could imagine. And in doing so, she had proven that no person can truly be owned, that the human spirit cannot be broken by those who value gold over goodness. Her story became a legend, passed down through generations, inspiring others who found themselves in impossible situations. It reminded them that circumstances do not define you, that betrayal does not have to destroy you, that from the ashes of injustice can rise something beautiful and lasting and true. And at the heart of that legend was a simple truth that Lily Mae had discovered in Harrison Drake's arms. That love, real love, the kind that sees you and values you and stands beside you through every storm, is worth more than all the wealth in the world. It is the treasure that can never be stolen, the riches that only grow with time, the inheritance that matters most in the end. That was the real story. Not just that Lily Mae had survived and thrived, though that was remarkable enough, but that she had found love in the midst of darkness, had built a family from the ruins of betrayal, had created a legacy that would outlast them all. She had returned richer than those who betrayed her because she understood what true wealth meant, and she had spent her life accumulating the only riches that truly matter. love, integrity, purpose, and the knowledge that she had lived fully and well. That was the story of Lily Mae Vance Drake, the woman who was sold to pay a debt but returned richer than every soul who betrayed her. It was a story that deserved to be remembered, celebrated, and held up as proof that one person's courage can change not just their own life, but the lives of everyone they touch. It was a story of the American West, of grit and determination, of justice hard-won and love freely given. And it was a story with a happy ending, the kind that reminds us all that no matter how dark the journey, there is always hope for those brave enough to keep walking toward the light.